My wife stole thousands of dollars from my own mother using credit card fraud. Then the police showed up at our door with a warrant. What happened next tore our family apart, but I had to protect my sons. And when I finally got the chance to give them a better life, she called me a monster for taking it. My name is David. I'm 32 years old, and this is the story of how I lost my wife, fought for my children, and had to make the hardest decision of my life. Sarah and I met during our college years at Ohio State. She was studying elementary education, and I was working toward my engineering degree. We met at a coffee shop near campus where she was tutoring kids after school. I still remember watching her patiently help a struggling third grader with his math homework, her voice gentle and encouraging. That's when I knew she had something special, this natural maternal instinct that made me picture our future together. "You're really good with kids," I told her that first day, sliding into the seat across from her after the boy had packed up his backpack and headed home. She smiled, tucking a strand of her auburn hair behind her ear. "I've always wanted to be a teacher. There's something magical about that moment when a concept finally clicks for them, you know?" I was smitten. We started dating within a week, and everything felt effortless. Sarah was warm, caring, and had this infectious laugh that could brighten any room. She got along wonderfully with my family, especially my mother, Linda. Mom had raised me as a single parent after my father passed away when I was 12, working 2 jobs to keep us afloat. Sarah understood that struggle and respected the bond Mom and I shared. "Your mother is incredible," Sarah would often tell me during those early years. "She raised such a good man." We married 3 years after graduation. The wedding was small but perfect, held in Mom's backyard with fairy lights strung between the oak trees. Sarah looked radiant in her simple white dress, and when she promised to love and honor me through better or worse, I believed every word. My mother cried during the ceremony, telling me later she'd never seen me so happy. Our first son, Jake, arrived 2 years into our marriage. Sarah was a natural mother, just as I'd expected. She'd spend hours reading to him, singing lullabies, and creating elaborate games that made him giggle until his face turned red. When our second son, Tommy, was born 2 years later, our family felt complete. I was working as a software engineer at a growing tech company, making decent money, while Sarah chose to stay home with the boys. It wasn't always easy financially, but we made it work. "I love being their mom," she'd tell me every time I suggested she might want to go back to work. "These early years are so precious. I don't want to miss anything." I supported her decision completely. We lived modestly in a 3-bedroom ranch house in a safe neighborhood with good schools. We took family vacations to places like the Great Smoky Mountains and Myrtle Beach. Nothing extravagant but filled with laughter and memories. Sarah would pack elaborate picnic lunches and plan activities that kept the boys entertained for hours. She documented everything in photo albums, writing little notes about what Jake and Tommy were doing at each stage. For 7 years, this was our life. Simple, happy, secure. Sarah managed our household budget carefully, and whenever she needed something significant, she'd talk to me about it first. New clothes for the growing boys, repairs for the house, occasionally a small splurge like a family dinner out. She was always thoughtful about our spending. Never once did she express that we were struggling financially or that she felt restricted by our budget. "We're blessed," she'd often say, watching the boys play in our backyard. "We have everything we need." My mother, who lived about 20 minutes away in a senior living community, adored Sarah and the boys. Every Sunday, we'd have dinner at her place, and Sarah would help Mom with little tasks around her apartment. They'd chat about recipes, the boys' milestones, and Mom's garden. Sarah genuinely cared about my mother's well-being, often calling her during the week just to check in. "She's like the daughter I never had," Mom confided in me one evening. "You chose well, David." But looking back now, there were tiny cracks I should have noticed. Small things that seemed insignificant at the time, but painted a different picture in hindsight. Sometimes Sarah would get defensive when I'd casually ask about purchases I didn't recognize on our bank statements. "It was just groceries, David. Do you want me to save every receipt?" she'd say with a slight edge in her voice. Or she'd quickly close her laptop when I'd walk into the room, claiming she was just browsing social media and didn't want to get sucked into pointless scrolling. There were also moments when she seemed anxious about money, despite our stable situation. She'd make comments about other families in our neighborhood, wondering aloud how they could afford new cars or home renovations. The Johnsons just got back from Disney World again, she'd mention, with a tone I couldn't quite read. Must be nice to have that kind of freedom. When I'd reassure her that we were doing fine and could plan our own vacation if she wanted, she'd brush it off. Oh, I'm not complaining. I'm grateful for what we have. But something in her expression suggested otherwise. The most troubling sign, though I didn't recognize it then, was how she'd sometimes bring up my mother's finances in casual conversation. Your mom seems to be doing well in that new place, she'd say after our Sunday visits. The rent there must be pretty steep. Good thing she has that retirement fund built up. I'd agree. Proud that Mom had managed to save enough to live comfortably in her golden years after working so hard for so many decades. What I didn't realize was that Sarah was filing away these details, learning about Mom's financial situation in ways that should have raised red flags. She showed me her new tablet today, Sarah mentioned one Sunday evening as we drove home. Said she's been doing more online shopping since it's easier than going to stores. She even has her credit card saved in the browser for convenience. That's great, I replied, focused on the road. Technology can be a real lifeline for seniors. Sarah nodded, but there was something calculating in her expression that I missed entirely. It really is amazing what you can do online these days. The boys were thriving during this time. Jake, now 5, was reading above grade level and had started kindergarten with enthusiasm. Tommy, at 3, was talking in full sentences and had developed his own little personality, more mischievous than his older brother, but equally sweet. Sarah documented their every milestone, filling scrapbooks with pictures and handwritten notes about their achievements. Look at this, she'd say, showing me a drawing Jake had made of our family. He drew you so tall, and look how he made my hair all curly. These were the moments that made everything feel perfect. Watching Sarah help Jake with his homework at the kitchen table while Tommy played with blocks nearby. Listening to her read bedtime stories in funny voices that made both boys collapse in giggles. Seeing the pride in her eyes when one of them learned something new. She was devoted to our family, and I trusted her completely. That trust made what happened next feel like a knife to the chest. It was a Tuesday morning in October. I had just gotten home from dropping Jake off at school when I heard heavy knocking at our front door. Sarah was in the kitchen cleaning up from breakfast while Tommy played with toy cars in the living room. The knocking was insistent, official sounding in a way that immediately put me on edge. "David Richardson?" asked the uniformed police officer when I opened the door. Behind him stood another officer and a woman in a business suit who introduced herself as Detective Martinez. "Yes, that's me," I replied, my heart already racing, though I had no idea why. "We have a warrant for the arrest of Sarah Richardson. Is she home?" The words hit me like a physical blow. "I'm sorry, what? There must be some mistake." Detective Martinez held up the paperwork. "Sir, we need you to step aside so we can speak with your wife. She's being charged with credit card fraud and identity theft." The world seemed to tilt. I could hear Sarah's voice from the kitchen, cheerfully singing along to a song on the radio, completely unaware that our entire life was about to implode. Tommy looked up from his cars, sensing the tension in the room. "Sarah," I called out, my voice somehow steady despite the chaos in my chest. "Can you come here for a minute?" She appeared in the doorway with a dish towel in her hands, smiling until she saw the officers. The color drained from her face instantly, and the towel slipped from her fingers to the floor. "Mrs. Sarah Richardson?" Detective Martinez stepped forward. "You're under arrest for fraudulent use of credit accounts and identity theft. You have the right to remain silent." "No," Sarah whispered, shaking her head. "No, there's been a mistake. I don't understand." But even as she said it, I could see the truth in her eyes. This wasn't confusion or shock. It was the look of someone whose secret had finally been exposed. Tommy had wandered over and was clinging to my leg, sensing something was very wrong, even if he couldn't understand what. "The charges relate to fraudulent purchases made using Linda Richardson's credit card information," the detective continued as she placed handcuffs on Sarah's wrists. "Over $4,000 in unauthorized charges over the past 6 months. My mother. Sarah had been stealing from my mother. "Daddy, why are they putting those things on Mommy?" Tommy asked, his voice small and scared. I picked him up, holding him close while watching my wife, my partner, the mother of my children, being read her rights in our living room. Sarah's eyes met mine over the officer's shoulder, filled with tears and something that might have been shame. "David, I can explain," she said desperately. "It's not what it looks like. I was going to pay it back. Everything I bought was for the boys, for our family. But I couldn't process her words. All I could think about was my mother, who had worked her entire life to save every penny, who had raised me with such sacrifice and love, who trusted Sarah like a daughter. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I felt physically sick. "Sir, we'll need you to come to the station later to answer some questions," Detective Martinez told me as they prepared to leave with Sarah. "You're not under investigation, but we need to establish what you knew about these charges." "I didn't know anything," I said numbly. I had no idea. After they left, I sat on the couch with Tommy in my lap, both of us staring at the front door, as if Sarah might walk back through it and explain that this was all some terrible misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The defensive behavior about purchases, the interest in Mom's finances, the secrecy about her online activities, it all made horrible sense now. I called my mother immediately. Her voice was shaky when she answered, and I realized she already knew. "The bank called me yesterday," she said quietly. "They flagged some unusual purchases on my card. Disney toys, children's clothes, expensive electronics. When I told them I hadn't made those purchases, they started an investigation." "Mom, I am so sorry," I said, my voice breaking. I had no idea. I never would have thought Sarah was capable of something like this. "I know, sweetheart. I know you didn't know. But David, some of these charges go back months. She's been using my information for a long time." The scope of Sarah's deception was staggering. While I was at work, trusting her completely with our family and our life, she had been systematically stealing from the woman who had sacrificed everything for me. Every gift she'd given the boys that I'd thought came from our careful budgeting, every small luxury I'd assumed we could afford, it had all been bought with my mother's money. When I picked Jake up from school that afternoon, I had to figure out how to explain why Mommy wasn't there. I kept it simple, telling him she had to go away for a little while to take care of some grown-up problems. His 5-year-old acceptance of this explanation broke my heart all over again. That evening, after putting both boys to bed with extra stories and cuddles, I sat alone in our living room and tried to make sense of what had happened. Our marriage hadn't been perfect, but I thought we were solid. I thought Sarah was happy, that she felt secure and loved in our life together. The fact that she'd been living this double life, stealing from my mother while sitting at her dinner table every Sunday, while helping her with household tasks and calling her during the week to check in, it revealed a level of deception I couldn't comprehend. The next few days were a blur of phone calls with lawyers, meetings at the police station, and trying to maintain some normalcy for Jake and Tommy while their world fell apart around them. Sarah was released on bail after 3 days in jail, and when she came home, the conversation we had changed everything. "I know you hate me," she said, sitting at our kitchen table while the boys napped upstairs. She looked exhausted, her usually neat appearance disheveled, her eyes red from crying. "I don't hate you, Sarah. I'm devastated. I'm confused. I don't understand how you could do this to my mother, to our family." I never meant for it to go this far," she said, tears streaming down her face. "It started small. Tommy needed new shoes and you were stressed about that overtime project at work. I didn't want to add more pressure, so I thought I'd just borrow a little from your mom's card and pay it back before anyone noticed. But it didn't stop there." "No," she whispered. "It became easier each time. Jake wanted that bicycle for his birthday, and you'd mentioned we needed to be careful with spending. Tommy outgrew his clothes so fast. There were always things the boys needed, and I told myself I was being a good mother by providing for them without making you worry about money." I stared at her, trying to reconcile this explanation with the woman I'd married. "Sarah, you never told me we were struggling. Anytime you asked for something for the boys, I said yes. We would have figured it out together. I know that now. But in the moment, it felt easier to just handle it myself. And then it became this secret I was carrying, and I didn't know how to tell you without destroying everything. So instead, you chose to steal from my mother, a woman who loves you like a daughter. Do you understand what you've done to her? She's 73 years old, Sarah. That money represented her security, her peace of mind." Sarah sobbed harder. "I was going to pay it all back. I had a plan. I was going to get a part-time job and replace every penny before anyone found out. But the plan had fallen apart when the bank's fraud detection system flagged the unusual purchases. $4,000 in unauthorized charges, all for things that benefited our family, while my mother's savings account grew smaller. That night, after Sarah had cried herself to sleep in our guest room, I made the decision that would define the next chapter of our lives. I couldn't trust her anymore. The foundation of our marriage had been built on honesty and partnership, and she had shattered both. More importantly, I couldn't trust her judgment when it came to our children. If she was capable of this level of deception, what other poor choices might she make in the future? I called a divorce attorney the next morning. The legal proceedings were complicated and painful. Sarah pleaded guilty to the fraud charges as part of a plea deal that resulted in 90 days in jail and 3 years of probation. During the divorce proceedings, I fought for full custody of Jake and Tommy. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. Sarah had been a loving and attentive mother, but her criminal behavior had created a situation where I felt I had to protect our sons. Your Honor, my attorney argued during the custody hearing, while Mrs. Richardson may have been a caring mother, her recent criminal conviction demonstrates a pattern of poor judgment and dishonesty that raises serious concerns about her ability to provide a stable environment for these children. Sarah's lawyer countered that her crime was an aberration, a mistake born from misguided love for her children rather than malicious intent. But the judge sided with my petition for sole custody, granting Sarah supervised visitation rights once she completed her jail sentence. The day the judge read his decision, I watched Sarah collapse into tears at the defendant's table. She looked at me across the courtroom with such anguish that I almost changed my mind about everything. Almost. But then I thought about Jake asking why Mommy had to go away and Tommy crying for her at bedtime. And I knew I was making the right choice for them, even if it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. During the 3 months Sarah was in jail, I tried to maintain as much normalcy as possible for the boys. I hired a babysitter to help with pickup and drop-off from school and daycare, and I adjusted my work schedule to be home for dinner and bedtime every night. We video called Sarah twice a week, and I always made sure the conversation stayed positive and age-appropriate. When is Mommy coming home? Jake would ask regularly. She's working on some things right now, I'd tell him, but she loves you very much, and she thinks about you every day. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was the truth they could handle at their ages. When Sarah was released, I made good on my promise to facilitate visits whenever possible. Despite everything that had happened between us, I never wanted Jake and Tommy to lose their relationship with their mother. We met at neutral locations like parks and restaurants, and Sarah was always punctual and engaged during these visits. She brought small gifts, played games with the boys, and asked about their school and activities with genuine interest. "Thank you," she said to me after one of these visits, as we watched Jake and Tommy climb on a playground while we sat on a nearby bench. "I know you didn't have to make this easy, but you have. It means everything to me." "They need their mom," I replied simply. "What happened between us doesn't change that." But even as we found our rhythm with this new arrangement, I was struggling. The boys missed their mother terribly, despite my efforts to keep things stable. Jake had started having nightmares and began wetting the bed again, something he hadn't done since he was 3. Tommy became clingy and would have meltdowns over small things like the wrong color cup at breakfast. I was seeing a counselor myself to process the betrayal and the guilt I felt about breaking up our family, but I worried constantly about the psychological impact on my sons. Our neighborhood had also become uncomfortable. Word had gotten out about Sarah's arrest, and while some neighbors were supportive, others seemed to view our family with suspicion or pity. Jake had been excluded from a birthday party, and I'd overheard mothers at the school pickup talking about whether they should allow their children to play at our house. The boys were too young to fully understand these social dynamics, but I could see the confusion in Jake's eyes when certain friends suddenly weren't available for playdates. It was during this period of adjustment that I received the phone call that would change everything again. "David, this is Patricia Wells from Tech Forward Solutions in Colorado," the voice on the other end said. "I'm calling about the senior engineering position you applied for last year." I remembered the application vaguely. I'd sent it during a period when I was exploring options for career advancement, back when Sarah and I were still together and dreaming about eventually moving to a bigger house. It felt like a lifetime ago. "We'd like to offer you the position," Patricia continued. "I know it's been a while since your initial application, but we've been waiting for the right candidate, and your experience is exactly what we're looking for." The offer was substantial. A 40% salary increase, full benefits including childcare at the company's on-site facility, and access to employee assistance programs that included counseling services for families. The position was in Fort Collins, Colorado, a growing city with excellent schools and outdoor recreation opportunities that would be perfect for raising 2 active boys. "I'll need some time to think about this," I told Patricia. "There are custody considerations I need to work through." "Of course. Take all the time you need. The position will remain open for you." That night, after putting Jake and Tommy to bed, I sat in my home office and researched Fort Collins online. The more I learned, the more excited I became. The cost of living was reasonable, the schools were top-rated, and the company's childcare facility looked amazing. There were hiking trails and parks everywhere, youth sports leagues, and a family-friendly community that seemed perfect for starting fresh. But could I legally move the boys across the country? I called my attorney the next morning. "Since you have sole custody, you have the right to relocate with the children," he explained. "However, given that their mother is in the state and has visitation rights, you'll need to petition the court for permission to move. The judge will consider what's in the best interests of the children." What factors will the judge look at? The opportunities the move provides for the children, your reasons for relocating, how it will affect their relationship with their mother, and whether you're acting in good faith or trying to interfere with her parental rights. I spent the next week researching everything about Fort Collins, the school district, the job opportunity, and the potential benefits for Jake and Tommy. The more I learned, the more convinced I became that this move could be exactly what our family needed. A fresh start in a place where the boys wouldn't be known as the children whose mother was arrested for fraud, access to better educational opportunities and mental health resources, a chance for me to rebuild my career and provide more financial security for their future. But I also knew I had to handle this carefully. Sarah was already devastated by the loss of daily contact with the boys. The thought of them moving across the country would be crushing for her. I decided to tell her before filing any paperwork with the court. We met at a coffee shop near her apartment on a Saturday morning while the boys were with my mother. "There's something I need to discuss with you," I said, sliding into the booth across from her. Sarah looked healthier than she had during the worst days of our crisis. She'd gotten a part-time job at a daycare center and was living in a small apartment, working to rebuild her life step by step. "Is everything okay? Are the boys all right?" "The boys are fine. This is about a job opportunity I've been offered in Colorado." I watched the color drain from her face as I explained the position, the benefits, and what it could mean for Jake and Tommy's future. She listened without interrupting, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup so tightly her knuckles were white. "You want to take my sons across the country?" she said when I finished. "I want to give our sons the best possible future," I corrected gently. "Sarah, you know how things have been here since everything happened. The looks at school pickup, the way some of the other parents treat the boys differently. This is a chance for them to start fresh in a place where they're not defined by what happened. They're not defined by what happened," she said, her voice rising. "They're just children. You're the one making them feel ashamed." "I'm not making them feel anything. I'm trying to protect them from a situation that's become uncomfortable and limiting. This job offers childcare at the workplace, which means I can spend more time with them. The school district is excellent, and there are counseling services available to help them process everything they've been through." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "And what about me? What about their relationship with their mother? I'm not trying to cut you out of their lives. We can arrange video calls, longer visits during school breaks. I'd even be willing to meet you halfway for visits if you want to maintain that connection." "Halfway," she repeated bitterly. "David, I've lost everything. My marriage, my home, my daily relationship with my children. And now you want to take them 1,000 miles away from me." I felt terrible seeing her pain, but I also felt strongly that this move was right for Jake and Tommy. "Sarah, I understand this is hard, but the consequences of what happened extend beyond just the legal punishment. Our entire family has been affected, and I have to make decisions based on what's best for the boys' long-term well-being." "You mean what's best for you? This is about your career, your fresh start. You're using the boys as an excuse to punish me further." "That's not true, and you know it. Every decision I've made since this started has been about protecting Jake and Tommy. Yes, this job is good for my career, which ultimately benefits them. But more than that, it's a chance for them to grow up in an environment where they're not carrying the weight of our mistakes." Sarah stared at me for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. "Our mistakes? This was my mistake, David. My crime, my poor judgment, my betrayal. The boys shouldn't have to pay for what I did by losing their mother. They're not losing their mother, but they deserve a chance to have a normal childhood without the complications that staying here creates. I'll fight this, she said quietly. I'll fight for custody, for the right to keep my children in the same state as their mother. You can try, I replied sadly, but I don't think you'll win. The court hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later, giving both of our attorneys time to prepare arguments. During that period, I accepted the job offer contingent on the court's approval, and Tech Forward agreed to hold the position. I also began preparing Jake and Tommy for the possibility of moving, framing it as an adventure to a place with mountains and snow. Will there be bears? Tommy asked excitedly when I showed them pictures of Colorado. There might be bears in the mountains, I said, but they stay far away from where people live. Jake was more thoughtful about the potential move. Will we still talk to Mommy? Of course. We'll call her all the time and she can come visit us, and maybe we can visit her too. He seemed satisfied with this answer, but I could see him processing the information in his serious 5-year-old way. The custody hearing was one of the most difficult days of my life. Sarah's attorney argued passionately that relocating the children would irreparably damage their relationship with their mother, and that my real motivation was to interfere with her parental rights as punishment for her crime. Your Honor, her lawyer said, Mrs. Richardson has completed her sentence, found stable employment, and has consistently demonstrated her commitment to rebuilding her relationship with her children. Moving them across the country serves no purpose other than to make visitation practically impossible, and to further punish her for mistakes she has already paid for legally. My attorney countered with evidence about the opportunities in Colorado, the challenges the boys were facing in our current environment, and my consistent efforts to maintain Sarah's relationship with the children despite the circumstances. Mr. Richardson is not seeking to eliminate the mother from these children's lives, my lawyer argued. He's seeking to provide them with the best possible environment for their development and well-being. The job opportunity offers financial stability, excellent childcare, and access to resources that will benefit these children long-term. The court should consider what serves the children's best interests, not what's most convenient for the parents. When it was my turn to speak, I addressed the judge directly. Your Honor, I want to be clear that this decision isn't about punishing my ex-wife. She made a serious mistake, but I've consistently tried to help maintain her relationship with Jake and Tommy because I believe that's important for them. However, I also have a responsibility to provide them with the best possible future, and this opportunity in Colorado offers advantages that I can't provide if we stay here. Better schools, better resources, a fresh start in a community where they can just be kids instead of carrying the burden of our family's crisis. The judge asked several questions about my plans for maintaining the children's relationship with their mother, the specifics of the job opportunity, and my motivations for seeking to relocate. I answered honestly, emphasizing that while the move would be difficult for everyone, I believed it was in Jake and Tommy's best long-term interests. Sarah spoke last, and her testimony was heartbreaking. She talked about how much she loved her sons, how hard she was working to rebuild her life, and how devastating it would be to have them move so far away during this critical period, when she was trying to repair their relationship. I know I made terrible mistakes, she said, her voice breaking. I know I hurt my family and betrayed their trust, but I love my children more than anything in this world, and I'm begging the court not to let them be taken away from me when I'm finally getting my life back together. When the judge announced his decision 2 days later, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. He granted my petition to relocate, citing the significant opportunities the move would provide for the children, and my demonstrated commitment to maintaining their relationship with their mother. While the court is sympathetic to Mrs. Richardson's situation, the judge said, the primary consideration must be the best interests of the children. Mr. Richardson has presented compelling evidence that this relocation will provide educational, financial, and social advantages for Jake and Tommy. Additionally, his proposed plan for maintaining contact with their mother through technology and scheduled visits demonstrates good faith in preserving that important relationship. Sarah's reaction was devastating to witness. She collapsed into sobs, and I had to resist the urge to go to her and offer comfort. Her pain was real and justified, but I still believed I was making the right choice for our sons. The weeks leading up to our move were bittersweet. I spent time helping the boys say goodbye to their friends, their school, and the only home they'd ever known. We had several final visits with Sarah, and I made sure she had multiple ways to stay in contact with them once we were in Colorado. I want you to remember how much Mommy loves you, I told Jake and Tommy before our last visit with her in Ohio. Even when we're far away, that love doesn't change. During that final visit, Sarah gave each boy a special stuffed animal to take with them. These are magical bears, she told them, fighting back tears. Whenever you hug them, they'll send my love all the way to you in Colorado. Jake clutched his bear tightly. Will you get our hugs back? Every single one, Sarah promised. Watching her say goodbye to them was one of the hardest things I'd ever witnessed. Sarah held both boys for a long time, whispering things in their ears that made them giggle despite the sadness of the moment. When it was time to go, Tommy didn't want to let go of her hand. I want Mommy to come with us, he said, looking between Sarah and me with confusion. Mommy has to stay here for now, I explained gently, but we'll talk to her all the time, and maybe she can come visit us in our new house. That night, both boys slept in my bed, clutching their bears and asking questions about when they'd see Mommy again. I promised them we'd call her as soon as we got to Colorado, and that visits would happen as often as we could arrange them. Our first few months in Fort Collins were an adjustment for all of us. The boys loved the mountains and the snow, and Jake quickly made friends in his new kindergarten class. Tommy thrived in the company's childcare facility, where the staff was amazing, and the resources were far beyond anything we'd had access to in Ohio. I found the work challenging and rewarding, and my colleagues were welcoming and supportive. We video called Sarah 3 times a week, and I kept my promise to bring the boys back to Ohio for visits. The first trip back was emotional for everyone. Sarah had prepared elaborate activities and had clearly been counting down the days until she could see them again. Watching her interact with Jake and Tommy during that visit, seeing how much joy it brought all 3 of them, reinforced my commitment to maintaining these connections despite the distance. Thank you, Sarah said to me as we prepared to return to Colorado after that first visit. I know this arrangement isn't easy for you either, but it means everything to me. They need their mom, I replied, echoing what I told her months earlier. Distance doesn't change that. As the months passed, our new life began to feel more natural. Jake and Tommy adapted to their new school and community with the resilience that children possess. They made friends, joined activities, and began to see Colorado as home. The counseling services available through my job were helpful for all of us as we processed the major changes in our family structure. But I also noticed positive changes that confirmed my belief that the move had been right for them. Jake's nightmares stopped, and his bedwetting resolved completely. Tommy became less clingy and more confident in social situations. They were able to just be kids again, without the weight of adult problems affecting their daily lives. Sarah and I developed a cordial co-parenting relationship despite the distance. She was always punctual for our scheduled calls, remembered important events in the boys' lives, and sent packages for birthdays and holidays. During our visits to Ohio, she never made them feel guilty about living far away, or tried to undermine the stability we'd built in Colorado. I can see how happy they are, she admitted during one of these visits, watching Jake and Tommy play in a park near her apartment. It's hard being so far away, but I can see that you made the right choice for them. That acknowledgement meant more to me than she probably realized. I'd carried guilt about the pain the move had caused her, even though I remained convinced it was necessary. As we approached the 1-year anniversary of our relocation, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this point, the betrayal that destroyed my marriage, the difficult custody battle, the heart-wrenching decision to move across the country. It had all been incredibly painful, but looking at my sons thriving in their new environment, seeing them happy and secure and unburdened by the complications that had defined their early childhood, I knew I'd made the right choices. During one of our video calls with Sarah, Jake announced that he'd been chosen for the advanced reading group at school. "That's wonderful, sweetie," Sarah said, her face lighting up with pride. "You've always been such a smart boy." After the call ended, Tommy asked me something that caught me off guard. "Daddy, is Mommy proud of us even though we live far away?" "Mommy is so proud of you," I assured him. "She loves you and Jake more than anything in the world, and she's proud of everything you do, no matter where you live." "Good," he said simply, then ran off to play with his toys. These moments reminded me that while our family structure had changed dramatically, The love between Sarah and the boys remained constant. That was something I never wanted to damage, despite everything that had happened between us. About 18 months after our move, Sarah called me with news that surprised me. She had been accepted into a graduate program for social work and was planning to specialize in helping families affected by financial crimes and substance abuse. "I want to turn what I went through into something positive," she explained during our conversation. "I made terrible choices, but maybe I can help other people avoid making the same mistakes." I was genuinely proud of her for this decision. It showed real growth and a commitment to rebuilding her life in a meaningful way. That sounds like an amazing opportunity, Sarah. The boys will be proud to know their mom is helping other families. I hope so. I also wanted to talk to you about something else. The program has partnerships with organizations in Colorado. There might be opportunities for me to relocate there once I finish my degree, if you'd be okay with that. The conversation gave me hope that maybe, in time, we could find a way to have the boys closer to both of their parents while still maintaining the stability and opportunities that Colorado provided. As I tucked Jake and Tommy into bed that night, I thought about how far we'd all come. Jake, now 6, was reading chapter books and had joined the school's soccer team. Tommy, at 4, was starting to show interest in music and had made several close friends at daycare. They talked about their mom regularly, looked forward to their calls with her, and were excited about our upcoming visit to Ohio for Christmas. "Daddy," Jake said as I turned off his bedroom light, "are you happy we moved here?" "I am, buddy. Are you happy?" "Yeah. I like our house, and I like my school, and I like that we still get to talk to Mommy." That's exactly how I hoped you'd feel. The next morning, I was getting ready for work when I received a text message that would lead to one of the most important conversations I'd had since the custody hearing. It was from a neighbor back in Ohio, someone who had been supportive during our difficult period. "Saw Sarah at the grocery store yesterday. She looks really good, David. Seems like she's doing well. Just thought you'd want to know." That evening, after the boys were asleep, I found myself thinking about the Reddit post I'd been considering writing for weeks. The question of whether I was wrong for moving after winning custody had been weighing on me, especially during moments when I saw how much the boys missed their mom, or when I witnessed Sarah's pain during our visits. I opened my laptop and began typing, needing to get the thoughts out of my head and seeking perspective from people who might understand the complexity of the situation. "Aita for moving after winning full custody of my sons," I wrote, then began telling the story that had defined the last 2 years of our lives. I explained about Sarah's crime, the betrayal I'd felt, the difficult custody battle, and the decision to relocate for a better job and fresh start. I tried to be fair in my description of Sarah's motivations and her efforts to rebuild her relationship with the boys. I acknowledged the pain the move had caused her, while explaining why I believed it was in Jake and Tommy's best interests. The responses started coming in within hours, and they were more varied than I'd expected. Some people thought I was absolutely justified in protecting my children and providing them with better opportunities, regardless of the cost to Sarah. Others felt I was being unnecessarily cruel by moving them so far from their mother when she was clearly working to turn her life around. But the response that stuck with me most came from someone who identified themselves as a family court judge. They wrote, "The hardest cases are the ones where everyone is trying to do the right thing, but those things are in conflict with each other. Your ex-wife made a serious mistake, but it sounds like she's genuinely trying to make amends. You're trying to provide the best possible future for your children, but that comes at the cost of their daily relationship with their mother. There's no perfect answer here, but based on what you've shared, it sounds like you've made thoughtful decisions with your children's well-being as the priority. The key is continuing to facilitate their relationship with their mom and being open to adjustments as circumstances change." That perspective helped me feel more at peace with the choices I'd made. I wasn't a monster for prioritizing my children's long-term well-being, even when it caused pain to their mother. But I also wasn't absolved of the responsibility to help maintain their relationship with Sarah and to remain open to changes that might benefit everyone. As Christmas approached, I began planning our longest visit to Ohio yet. 2 weeks with Sarah, during which she could have extended time with the boys and we could all spend Christmas together as a family, albeit a very different kind of family than we'd once been. "Are we going to have Christmas at Mommy's house?" Tommy asked when I told them about the trip. "We'll spend Christmas Day with Mommy, and you can sleep at her apartment for a few nights if you want to." Both boys were excited about this plan. and I could hear the anticipation in Sarah's voice when I called to coordinate the details. "David, I can't tell you how much this means to me," she said. "I know it's not easy for you to arrange these longer visits, but having them here for Christmas feels like such a gift. They're excited to see you too. Jake has been working on a special drawing for you, and Tommy has been practicing a song he learned at school." During that Christmas visit, I watched Sarah with the boys and saw glimpses of the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. She was patient, attentive, and completely focused on making their time together special. She'd saved money to buy them thoughtful gifts and had planned activities that created new memories while honoring their shared history. On Christmas morning, as I watched Jake and Tommy open presents in Sarah's small apartment, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: sadness for the family we'd once been, gratitude for the stability we'd found in Colorado, and hope for whatever version of family we might become in the future. "Thank you," Sarah said to me quietly, while the boys played with their new toys, "for making this possible, for not letting your anger at me prevent them from having their mother in their lives." "I was never angry at you for being their mother," I replied. "I was angry at the choices you made that put our family at risk. But you're working to make things right, and that matters." Later that evening, after putting the boys to bed in Sarah's apartment and preparing to return to my hotel, she asked me a question that I'd been expecting. "Do you think there's any chance we could work things out? Not necessarily get back together, but find a way to be a family again in some form?" I considered her question carefully before answering. "I think we're building something different than what we had before, but maybe something that works better for who we are now. I can't go back to the marriage we had, Sarah. Too much has changed, and too much trust was broken. But I can see us being co-parents who support each other and put the boys first." She nodded, tears in her eyes, but also something like acceptance. "That's more than I have any right to ask for." The flight back to Colorado after that visit was bittersweet. Jake and Tommy were sad to leave their mom, but excited to return to their friends and routine. As we flew over the mountains approaching Denver, Tommy pressed his face to the airplane window and said, "Look, Daddy, we're home." That simple statement encapsulated everything I'd hoped to achieve with our move. Colorado had become home for them, a place where they felt secure and happy and unburdened by adult complications. But Ohio was still important too, as the place where their mother lived and where part of their history would always be rooted. Over the following months, our routine of video calls and periodic visits continued to work well for everyone. Sarah's graduate program was going well, and she was already exploring internship opportunities that might eventually bring her closer to Colorado. The boys continued to thrive in their new environment, and I found satisfaction in both my career advancement and my ability to provide them with opportunities I couldn't have offered in Ohio. One evening in late spring, almost 2 years after our move, I was helping Jake with his homework when he asked me a question that showed how much he'd matured. "Daddy, was it hard for you when Mommy had to go to jail?" I put down the math worksheet we'd been working on and gave him my full attention. "It was very hard, buddy. I was sad and confused and worried about what it meant for our family. Is that why we moved to Colorado? That's part of it. I wanted to make sure you and Tommy had the best possible life, with good schools and opportunities to try new things. Sometimes that means making changes that are hard at first but better in the long run." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "I like it here, but I miss Mommy sometimes." "It's okay to miss Mommy. I'm glad you miss her, because that means you love her, and we'll keep visiting her and talking to her, so the feeling stays strong. Will she ever live near us again? Maybe someday. Mommy is working very hard to make her life better, and if she finds opportunities near us, we'd be happy to have her closer." That conversation reminded me that while Jake and Tommy were still young, they were beginning to understand the complexities of our situation in age-appropriate ways. They could hold space for loving their mother while also appreciating the life we'd built in Colorado. As we approached the second anniversary of our move, I found myself reflecting on the Reddit responses I'd received to my post. The overwhelming consensus had been NTA, not the asshole, with most people agreeing that I'd made difficult but necessary decisions to protect my children's well-being. But what struck me most were the comments from people who'd been in similar situations, either as parents making tough custody decisions or as children who'd lived through family crises. One response that particularly resonated with me came from someone who wrote, "My dad made a similar choice when I was young, moving us away from my mom after she made some serious mistakes. At the time, I was angry and confused. But now, as an adult, I can see that he was protecting us and giving us opportunities we wouldn't have had otherwise. The key is that he never tried to turn us against our mom or prevent us from loving her. It sounds like you're doing the same thing. That perspective gave me confidence that Jake and Tommy would eventually understand the decisions I'd made, even if they couldn't fully grasp them now. The most recent chapter in our ongoing story came just a few months ago, when Sarah called with news that changed everything once again. "I've been offered a position with a family services organization in Denver," she said, barely containing her excitement. "It's a good job, David. It would mean I could move to Colorado and be near the boys again." My initial reaction was complicated. Part of me was happy for her and excited about the possibility of the boys having both parents nearby. But another part of me worried about disrupting the stability we'd worked so hard to build. "Tell me about the job," I said, wanting to understand the opportunity fully. She explained that it was a counselor position working with families affected by financial stress and legal issues, directly related to her graduate studies and personal experience. The salary would allow her to live independently, and the organization had a strong reputation in the community. "I wouldn't be asking to change our custody arrangement immediately," she continued. "I know the boys are settled and happy with you, but maybe over time, we could work toward more shared custody, if that makes sense for everyone." We talked for over an hour about the practical and emotional implications of her potential move. By the end of the conversation, I realized that this development represented exactly the kind of positive change I'd hoped might eventually happen. "I think it could be really good for the boys to have you nearby," I told her. "Let's take it slow and see how everyone adjusts, but I'm supportive of you making this move." When I told Jake and Tommy that their mom might be moving to Colorado, their reactions were immediate and joyful. "Really? Mommy would live near us?" Tommy asked, bouncing up and down with excitement. "She's thinking about it. It would mean you could see her more often, maybe have sleepovers at her house sometimes." Jake, ever the thoughtful one, asked, "Would we still live with you?" "Yes, this would still be your home, but you might get to spend more time with Mommy too." The possibility of Sarah's relocation has opened up conversations about what our family might look like in the future. Not the nuclear family we once were, but perhaps something better suited to who we've all become through this experience. As I finish writing this story, I'm struck by how much has changed since that terrible October morning when the police arrived at our door. The betrayal that destroyed my marriage also led to opportunities and growth that none of us could have anticipated. Jake and Tommy are thriving in ways that wouldn't have been possible if we'd stayed in Ohio. Sarah has transformed her mistake into motivation for meaningful work helping other families. And I've learned that protecting my children sometimes means making decisions that cause short-term pain, but create long-term benefits. The question of whether I was wrong to move after winning custody has been answered, at least in my own mind. Every decision I made was guided by what I believed was best for Jake and Tommy, even when those decisions were painful for everyone involved. I never tried to eliminate Sarah from their lives or turn them against her. Instead, I tried to create conditions where they could maintain their relationship with their mother, while also having access to opportunities and stability that would serve them well as they grew up. Looking back, I realized that there were no perfect choices in our situation. Every option involved trade-offs and compromises. But I'm at peace with the path we took, especially seeing how it's led to possibilities for healing and growth that might not have existed otherwise. Tonight, as I tuck Jake and Tommy into bed in our Colorado home, I feel grateful for the journey that brought us here. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it's a good life. And if Sarah does move to Denver, it might become an even better one. "Daddy," Jake says as I turn off his light, "when Mommy moves here, will she come to my soccer games?" "I'm sure she'd love to come to your soccer games." "Good. I want her to see how fast I can run now." That simple desire for his mother to witness his growth and celebrate his achievements captures everything I've been trying to preserve through all the difficult decisions of the past 2 years. Jake and Tommy's relationship with their mother is precious, and maintaining it while also providing them with the best possible future has been the challenge that's defined my role as their father. As I close their bedroom door and walk downstairs to my own evening routine, I feel confident that we're on the right path. It's been a complicated journey, marked by betrayal, legal battles, difficult relocations, and ongoing navigation of a fractured but healing family structure. But through it all, my boys have remained the priority, and their well-being has guided every major decision. The Reddit community's verdict of NTA feels right to me now. Not because I never made mistakes or because every choice was easy, but because every choice was made with love and careful consideration of what would serve Jake and Tommy best in the long run. Sometimes being a good parent means making decisions that others don't understand or that cause temporary pain in service of greater good. Our story isn't over. Sarah's potential move to Colorado opens up new chapters and possibilities. Jake and Tommy will continue to grow and develop their own understanding of our family's history. And I'll keep navigating the balance between protecting them and helping them maintain connections to everyone who loves them. But tonight, in this moment, I'm at peace with the choices I've made and hopeful about the future we're building together, one decision at a time.